Hey, welcome to the stream. I'm Josh Rushing. Today, the mystery surrounding the missing Malaysian Airlines Flight 370. Nearly a decade later, the disappearance remains unsolved. Let's take a step back. Remember what we know about the case. On March 8, 2014, MH370 was flying from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing when it disappeared from radar over the South China Sea. On board, 227 passengers and 12 crew members. Because satellite data had last recorded the plane's location heading westward toward the Indian Ocean, an international search effort lasted there for 3 years but yielded no new evidence. 9 years later, there have been no bodies found, no fuselage, no black box, no proven answers, and yet still so many questions. And with us to try to answer some of those questions, in New York City, we're joined by Jeff Wise, an aviation journalist. In Doha, Alex Pacheras, an aviation analyst, and Florence Deschanguy, an investigative journalist and Hong Kong-based foreign correspondent for Le Monde. Welcome to you all. Alex, I just want to begin with you. I gave us facts that are 9 years old. What are some of the updated facts that we know since then? I know there are a lot of theories out there, but just some of the things we can actually accept as fact.
Very few, and that is why this remains one of the greatest mysteries, because ordinarily over a period of time that has passed, I mean, we've had the end of the search 2017, we're now in 2023, there are almost no updates. What we do know is that there have been credible examples of debris that have been linked with case numbers to have been linked to the MH370 aircraft, the Boeing 777 that was involved in this flight. But since then, there has been no search and a continuation in the search operation. The Malaysia government has not renewed its commitment to search, and they say that they are just waiting for credible evidence. But of course, if there is no entity out there searching for credible evidence, then what updates are we going to have? So the answer is that between the end of the search and now, none.
Wow. All right. Let's check out the trailer for this new series on Netflix. It's 3 episodes that dives a little deeper into this.
We have breaking news. Malaysia Airlines confirms it has lost contact with a plane carrying 227 passengers.
It seems to have vanished into thin air.
What do we tell the family members? What do we tell the media?
My daughter asked me, where is Papa? It's just so unimaginable.
I felt completely shattered. I lived in denial about the plane having some sort of crash.
Le monde s'arrête, quoi. Tout d'un coup, ils disent, mais c'est pas possible, c'est un cauchemar, réveillez-moi.
What happens next is like a rip in the fabric of reality.
Theories about the missing plane are going viral.
It's possible it was hijacked.
All right, so we actually are joined by 2 of the people featured in that documentary. Before we go there, we're also joined by you. If you're watching live on YouTube, I want you to join this conversation. Give some questions to me so that I can get them to our guest. And we already have some questions. So I'm going to go to YouTube now and bring in, let's bring in, this is Maria Reneke, says, maybe the pilot was depressed and took everyone down with him. Maybe went through trauma when he was young. Florence, we'll come to you to talk about the pilot. And there was another one about the pilot that I want to bring as well that said somewhere out there, someone knows the truth about 777. Maybe that's true. Let's see. So Florence, let's begin with you, because it seems to me the most obvious explanation has to involve the pilot. But you've actually looked into the pilot. Tell me what you think about him, what you know about him.
Well, just like you, when I realized I was going to dig a little bit deeper in that story, and that was just to revisit the first anniversary of the disaster, I went back to Kuala Lumpur and I gave myself a week to find out who exactly was this man, because there had been so many rumors, so many all kind of crazy stories about him, his personal life, his political commitment, that I thought, and everyone knows that on a plane, the key person is the pilot, right? So I wanted to clear that. And I can't describe the feeling I got so early in my research. I actually remember it physically, thinking, what a relief. I never thought I would get so quickly the conviction that this man is absolutely fine. He was not the best of mind. You don't want a hero there. You just want a good man. And not only he was good in his mind, in his health, in his life, he was also an excellent pilot. And I've seen some people who said, look, if you ever are in trouble in a plane, you want Harry, their friend, his friend used to call him Harry. You want Captain Zahari Shah in the cockpit. So once you know that you have one of the best pilot, most trustworthy, reliable guy in the cockpit, it narrows enormously the potential of what may happen to you. Now, I tried my best to clear his name during all these years. And I must say, I am appalled and saddened and ashamed that his name not only has not been cleared, but has actually been actively smeared by different reporters, including Jeff, I'm afraid, who to this day, whose fake scoop to this day is still on internet available to accuse him as the greatest culprit. And this is an enormous shame to me because I'm partly reliable, guilty of this thing that Jeff did. But I feel very sorry for his family and for everyone. And I think the families of MH370, they do know by now, most of them, that Zahari Shah, Captain Zahari Shah was a good man. And this is the key thing. And if I can start by another little correction just with Alex, and that shows you how much misconception and how much misinformation there is around this story. Actually, the debris that have been validated are highly problematic, and we can get back to that later.
Florence, is it problematic when we know, would you accept the fact that at least part of the debris in 8 cases have been linked with the same serial number? I mean, of course, if we're going to be speaking with all due respect to the family situation and the captain, if we're going to treat that as a fact and rule things out, why are we ruling out? Why are we not taking seriously the fact that debris from MH370 has been categorically linked in over 8 cases with the same serial numbers that are consistent with the exact 777 involved? That's the part of the documentary I wanted to come to you about, actually. Why should that not be taken seriously?
I mean, Alex, with no offense, I don't think you're fully aware of the situation with the debris. The first debris was a flaperon found in Reunion Island, right? That was eventually vetted by the French. And if you look at the report, it's 100 pages, and it's immediately, they say immediately that they do not vouch for the provenance because the provenance has been declared by a political statement. And everything about this flaperon is highly problematic. First of all, the fact that it arrived in Reunion, after 15 months of floating, you wonder why, because it's a broken piece of composite material. It managed to float and find its way for thousands of miles.
I get the suggestion that there are questions as to, the way in which it appeared and of course the coincidences that you guys both explored in the documentary. But do you accept that there are categorical factual examples of the serial numbers being the same, of international aviation organizations confirming that there was a link?
Absolutely not. And it's extraordinary to read in the report from the Australian that they dare to say that they thought it was not necessary to check this piece with Boeing. I mean, if there is one entity on Earth who would have been able to say, well, yes, this is truly a piece, not just from a B777, but from MH370, it might have been Boeing. And for some reason, the Australians have thought that this was not necessary. I mean, it's a botch job of identifying this piece.
I want to bring Jeff in. Jeff, you've looked at this thing for years and years since it happened. Can you talk about these pieces and that they've been categorically identified as belonging to that airplane?
Well, I think it's important to maybe pull back a little bit and understand why we think what we think, okay? So most of the search is predicated on these 7 pieces of satellite data that Inmarsat discovered, quite to their surprise, that they had in their possession. They'd been recorded automatically after the plane had disappeared. Now, if you've watched the documentary, you understand that at first, most people believed that the most likely thing that the plane had crashed right there over the South China Sea, and then they subsequently found these radar returns that suggested the plane had flown to the west and then disappeared again. So the plane actually disappeared 3 times, effectively. And so the whole mystery really hinges on this this set of Inmarsat data that once I think it's important for people to understand, no plane had ever transmitted data like this before. This plane had found itself in an unprecedented electrical configuration where it was only broadcasting this kind of very arcane metadata. Once the Inmarsat scientists figured out and they understood how these signals had been generated, they did some very fancy, they had to basically invent this math to figure out what it meant. And what it meant, once they rolled up their sleeves and did it, was that the plane had gone south, okay? So the Inmarsat data unequivocally says that the plane went south and wound up in a pretty tight area in the southern Indian Ocean. Now, a major problem with that is that when they searched that area in the southern Indian Ocean, no aircraft was found. And they haven't really explained why they haven't found it. I have my own ideas of why they didn't find it. You can watch the documentary and find out my explanation. Just a quick point of clarification. Florence said that I have insulted Zaharie by implying that he committed suicide. I actually have explained a way that he might not have taken it. There's a way that Zaharie actually was a victim of a hijack by somebody else. Mm-hmm. And so I actually agree with her. Zaharie seems like a nice guy, and I've written at some length. I think I had written about how investigators had found flight paths on his home simulator. I was reporting that. I didn't create that or make that up. That's something that happened. I wrote about it. So I just want to make it clear that that to me is that piece of information actually runs counter to the theory that I have kind of publicly become associated with. So it didn't really do me any good to talk about this. But just to clarify, from my perspective, the home simulator data is against my theory, but I don't find it dispositive. I think it could actually just be a coincidence. This case is so strange. When you really get down into the nitty-gritty of it, there is no one simple explanation that in a simple and easy way tells us what must have happened. There's a lot of weird stuff, and we have to really, really dial down into it to really understand.
You know, I found a story doing some research on this that isn't included in the documentary. It came out in December, and it's about another piece of debris that experts say suggests that the plane, the landing gear was lowered before it hit the water, and they said it would take an active pilot to do that. So have you guys looked into that?
I have.
If I can,
I'm familiar with that piece of evidence.
Okay.
Basically, there's people that are kind of running around and kind of throwing in their 2 cents. And the media at this point, there's kind of marginal media that will just take any random person's claim and run with it. People who are more familiar with aircraft parts have read that claim and kind of dismissed it. It may well be a piece of MH370, but this idea that you're able to prove all sorts of things about the crash is, I would consider it not very serious.
Florence, you were jumping in there?
Well, about, the fact that some people more than others are very gifted at finding flotsam and jetsam on a very regular basis, to me is, it does not make sense, for God's sake. I'm a sailor. I actually live on a boat. I'm on the sea more often than on land. And I know that you do not get basically debris floating for thousands of miles. Years later, things sink, unfortunately. And this debris hunt that started almost 2 years actually after the plane had crashed. And remember that 50 days after the crash, Tony Abbott, not that he's the greatest person to quote, but anyway, he did say that was common sense, that after 50 days, everything would be waterlogged and would have sunk by now. Yet 500 days later, we start finding a flaperon, and 2 years later, we start finding all kind of plane debris. Sorry, it makes no sense.
Well, Alex, I want to ask you, let me bring in a comment from YouTube. This is from Aswin Kumar, and says, does the black box not emit signals to be located after the crash?
Yes, it does.
I was just emailing with somebody about this earlier today, but I'm sorry, you're going to take Alex.
Go for it, Alex.
I was just about to say that it does, and those signals were not detected. I remember in the very early days that they thought that they were hearing something, or they were discovering those ultimately as like pings up to the surface. But no, no black box has been found. What I think, and this is the issue I have with the Netflix documentary, is that I'm not sure they left enough room for the facts, because the facts, There are very few of them because we simply do not know. And I think it's okay to be able to say we do not know because we do not know. And, you know, the Malaysian government and the calls for the return of the search and things, that conversation can still take place while also admitting that there is very little we know. And because we do not know a lot, I don't think we should immediately be taking, you know, a variety of different theories and somehow treating them as closer to facts than the other when the facts are so few. And that's okay. This is an unprecedented aviation mystery because of the nature in the way that this is.
If I may jump in here, the fact that we don't know all these things is highly in itself problematic, and it is a clue. You know, there is a good saying with the scouts, I think, which is that erasing traces leaves traces. And when I started my investigation, I essentially had to look for all the erased traces. And so you don't find the facts, you find the missing facts. Because if that MH370 had U-turned, had flown over these 7 airspaces, had crashed in the Indian Ocean, we would have all this evidence that we don't have. And so at some point, you have to ask yourself, why has Malaysia not been able to provide credible and consistent radar image? Same for Indonesia, Thailand, but also Singapore, Australia. And if they don't have the facts and if they don't have the images, etc., it's because the plane was never there. Remember as well, if I can add another striking fact, is that MH370, just let me finish this, please. MH370 also flew over the Penang, the Butterworth Air Base in Penang, which is supposedly under Australian command. They did not scramble jets with a rogue B777 flying over the roof. The only good explanation for that is because there was never a massive rogue plane on above their head. So just bring in a bit of common sense and let's not say that this is too technical. A B777 is not technical, it's massive, it's as big as a building, and 239 people is not technical. All of this missing is not minute and is not microscopic, it's massive.
Well, hey, look, I want to bring in why it's not okay to not know. And that's for the loved ones of these more than 200 people that have just gone missing. It's a fate worse than death because there's no closure to it. Here, we actually have a comment from one of them. This is Grace Nathan. Watch this.
So much has happened in these 9 years. There was a baby who wasn't born yet. One of the next of kin was expecting when the plane disappeared. And that baby who wasn't born yet is now in school. I think already maybe in standard 2, already 8 years old, 9 years old. And that's how much time has passed. There's me who was a student at the time and now a mother. So much has changed. There are people here who have become grandparents, who have become wives, become husbands. 9 years is a really long time. But I think what we've always tried to say is that MH370 is not history, it's the future. Because if we don't know what happened to MH370, we cannot prevent it from happening again. So today it's us, but tomorrow it could be anyone who boards a plane. And that is something that should be prevented at all costs. This is not a mystery that should be left a mystery forever. It's just not acceptable.
Yeah, for more than 200 people, they've just stopped, but they haven't died. There's no closure.
I couldn't agree with that more. I think she's so right. You know, we can find a Higgs boson. We should be able to find a 210-foot long airplane. Mm-hmm. And to the idea that, like, hey, there's so much we don't know what we don't know. I have argued for 9 years that actually there is a lot that we can do with what we have in hand. We have the radar data, we have the Inmarsat data, we know a lot of information actually, and even the failure of the seabed search is itself a very important and significant data set. So what can we do? I feel that we can move forward. I'm not willing to say that this is a 9-year-old cold case. I want to move forward. I think there's, first of all, and I think this documentary is an important first step, to explain to people that, look, we have a very rich data set, but it's hard to understand. And I really need to kind of break down and explain for you, what is this Inmarsat data? What is a BFO data? What is BTO data? What does it mean? How do we use it? What does it tell us? It's not data like people have ever encountered before. It works in a slightly different way, and it leads us to have different expectations from what people might not.
Just before your explanation, Jeff, can I tell the audience that they realize that this famous Inmarsat data, which I know from a very good sources from the beginning to be flawed, number one, has never been used before to locate a plane. Number two, has not achieved to locate a plane in 9 years. And number three, has never been tried to locate a plane again. So as far as I'm concerned, Inmarsat data is good for the dustbin. And whether it has some value in it or not,
that is as far as you are concerned.
Wait, hold on, Alex. Hold on, Alex. 30 seconds to finish, Florence, and then we're going to come to Alex. Finish, Florence, please.
Yes. So basically, whether it has some value and whether it is related to another plane or to some extent to MH370, I've also had all kind of explanation. But in all, we cannot try and find 239 people on the base of a sheet of data. That's not good enough.
Alex.
I don't see, I think we're in a dangerous place if we are absolutely stating on air as fact that Inmarsat data is flawed. One thinks it's flawed, the other one thinks it was fake, with respect. And questioning how if the aircraft is not there, it's because it's not there. And, do we really need to revisit the subject of the size of the Southern Indian Ocean or the Indian Ocean, as a whole? This was where I took issue with Netflix for platforming theories that in some aspects were, okay, all theories are on the table because there is very little that we know. On the other hand, we can't be simply throwing out opinions. You started your sentence off with as far as you are concerned, and that is absolutely true. That is your opinion, that as far as you are concerned. But we can't be treating this as fact, not least because of what we just heard.
It's based on an 8-year investigation.
Not least because of what we just heard from the families, where they are the ones caught up in this roller coaster, clinging on to every word and theory. Instead, I wonder, with legitimate wonder, why there hasn't been more effort of governments to come together to resume the search, why we haven't had China applying pressure on Malaysia, given there were so many Chinese nationals on board, to resume the search. We are in a different place. I can give you my
explanation to this.
We are in a different place in 2023 than we were even when the search ended in 2017. With innovation, with technological advancements, I think, a calls to action cross-government for a little bit of unity, for the sake of the onboard, the 200 on board, would be where I would like that conversation to shift, not to continue to throw out that if it's like this and if it means that, then it means it's simply all faked or quote, good for the dustbin. The investigators have worked with the data that they've had, and you guys are familiar with the data set. I just think we're in a little bit of a dangerous place if we start immediately claiming it to be an outright lie.
It's not, Alex, I'm sorry. It's absolutely, I don't say such an outrage. I don't make such an outrageous claim lightly. It is based on a lot of research, and it's based on excellent information that I got early on. And later on, I keep receiving people, former employees of Inmarsat, who try to convince me and to explain to me that what Inmarsat did with this data doesn't make any sense. So, and I'm like, thank you guys, but I've worked that out already, so I'm not wasting time anymore on the Inmarsat data. I'm not saying this lightly. I know it's a big comment to make, but I think it's very important to clarify, at least, indeed, as
Florence,
far as I am concerned.
Hey, Florence,
after
I've got to stop you because I've got 1 minute left in the show, and I really want to ask Jeff a question. And unfortunately, I don't even have time to set up your whole theory, Jeff. But part of it depends on the plane being able to be flown from the avionics room or cabin in the plane. Do you believe that this plane could be flown from where the avionics are on the plane? And I've got 40 seconds till we're off air. I think Jeff's frozen. Alex, can a plane be flown from the avionics cabin?
No.
Absolutely not. Okay.
That's why, this is why there's been such a backlash and from the industry to that very specific claim. And I'll give you the quick answer. No.
Perfect. Short answer, Alex. I appreciate it because we are at the end of this show, but not the end of this story. It's only 9 years on. The search will go on until these 200 plus families have an answer about what happened with their loved ones. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we'll see you next time.